Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. And on today's episode, I'm speaking to Tommy Victor, the founding member, guitarist, and vocalist of New York City-based metal act Prong, who first formed in the mid-'80s and are perhaps best known for their hits Snap Your Finger, Snap Your Neck, and Whose Fist Is It Anyway from the 1994 album Cleansing. Prong are back with their 13th album, State of Emergency, out now on Steamhammer SPV Records. And on today's podcast, I talked to Tommy about the new album, from its songwriting and recording to working back on his home turf of NYC, the inspiration behind key tracks, plans for touring, the band's legacy, and much more. So take a listen and stick around afterwards. I'll be playing the track Non-Existence off the new album. First off, I've listened to the new album for the past couple of weeks, State of Emergency. I absolutely love it. This is your 13th album. So did you approach it any differently this time around, or was there any focus you had on it, or anything in particular that was on your mind when you created this record?
Yeah, I wanted it all to be written and recorded in New York or the New York area. After my family and I decided that we're moving back here, that I thought that would be cool. And yeah, that was pretty much it. It wound up being different where I wrote everything myself, and there was no collaboration, and I picked the time frame when to do it, which was something that hasn't been happening for a really long time. Because I had management that were always pushing me into making records at a certain time, and I thought I was rushed a little bit. This time it wasn't that at all. But it took, ironically, it took shorter, and it was. We got a lot more work done in a small amount of time. It was a lot more focused than previous records.
What do you think has given Prong such longevity, and how do you see the band now, now versus when you first started off?
It started in 86. How do I feel? I still feel, I can't really find the right adjective or describe it. But I don't feel recognized, or I don't feel like we're at a great level. It's always been that. That could just be me. I just don't appreciate where I'm at ever. But I'm just being honest. I don't. Even when we first got signed to a major label. And even when, we had the successes that we did have, I just didn't think it was, enough, or I thought that we were always fighting. We had a lot of obstacles in our way, and, a lot of criticism, and, we had a lot of obstacles to our success.
Give me just one. I've got to get this cat out of my room.
I didn't see the cat.
You were being, He's being a maniac. So can you get in for me, babe? Thank you. And shut the door behind you.
Oh, how old is your daughter?
She will be 8 years old on New Year's Day.
Nice.
New Year's baby. So
that's a good thing. First of the year.
Yeah. She's she was the first baby born in Austin in 2016. So.
Oh, wow.
But that leads me to a question too, is that you're I know you have an older daughter, but you have 2 young kids now. Has that changed anything about the way you work, or anything you're focusing on, or your creative process?
It's totally changed everything. As I was joking with my wife today, that this State of Emergency was written 9 to 5, and she said, "Well, maybe that's why you picked Working Man subconsciously on the record." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's like I didn't even think of that, but the record was written and worked on from 9 to 5 because I have to bring. Well, at that time it was just my son, and bring him to daycare, run back home, set up my gear in his nursery or his bedroom, then break it down, like work as much as I can, then break it down again because I can't leave it there, and then pick him up, bring him back home, cook dinner as my wife was working in the city, and like cook dinner and clean up, and then put him to bed, and just do that from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So that's a big difference than working at CBGB's and getting home at 5 in the morning and writing a couple of songs at 6 in the morning, and then sleeping all day, and going back to work at 4. So.
Well, you mentioned the Rush cover, and I was really, when I first said you were doing a Rush cover, I was like, what? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Then I heard it and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. It's such a great rendition of Working Man. Was that, what made you first decide to, that idea first pop into your head, like, let's do a Rush cover?
I think that, like, your interview, like, this will be the first time I make an honest response. And I've done a lot of press on this record, and I don't think I've been completely truthful. We did that Songs from the Black Hole record, which has a lot of eclectic tastes, and it's like a lot of metal people don't even know half the artists on it, and the record label, like, they had no clue of what anybody was on it, and why did we make those selections. It's like, what, I'd like, if I'm going to do another cover now, it's going to have to be from somebody famous. So that was one of the requisites of it. And I was going through old records. When I first moved back to New York, I was listening to a lot of like old stuff. So, and that first Rush record was one of them. And I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. And, I was just, I was learning some old records, trying to get my chops in gear a little bit from guitar playing wise. And I just started jamming that riff. I was like, well, this is pretty cool. And then, when we were doing pre-production, I laid it on everybody, and they were like, well, this is pretty cool. So we just made an arrangement and did it. But I thought that inevitably, then looking at one of the reasons why I agreed to doing what I thought was a good idea was the lyric. Again, I didn't even think about the whole 9 to 5 thing, but like the lyric was more in the vein of what Prong is, where, it's like, stop your finger, stop your neck. Like, like this trudging, this grind in order to become happy, for how much work we do just to get a little bit of happiness out of life, so that was sort of, and then like the dark tone of the lyrics on State of Emergency, where, there's a couple of songs where it's sort of like this agony that's going on. So, I thought that it worked with it.
Well, I think it's great because to me, the best kind of covers to me are ones where you recognize it, but it has its own flavor to it. And I definitely think that you definitely prongified it, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I hope people hear it. That's the thing. It's like, there's so many records out, and that's what I always feel like. The genre we're in, if we're even in a genre, it's just so saturated, and there's just so much stuff going on that sometimes I get disillusioned. I just hope people hear it. I hope it gets it gets. I want people to hear the stuff we do. So I was very disappointed with Songs from the Black Hole. We spent a lot of time and energy on that covers record. Like, it was a brutal project to get done, like for no money at all, and it was just it was painful. And like no one, I mean, even Prongers, they didn't even know the thing's out. They have no idea. Like, it just got absolutely no attention at all. So hopefully, this record gets some kind of listenership.
Well, that's a shame because I really like that album. I love the Sisters of Mercy cover in particular.
Yeah, and it's like it was a real project too. It was like a real serious project. That thing was it was amazing how much work we put into it, for absolutely no return. Like, I mean, guys like you appreciate it, but like, you know, it's bizarre to me. That's why I don't have any that much faith in the um, in the rock world these days. It's like, you know, even no matter how much, it's like, you know, like even seeing some of the reviews for Prong and like the way we're treated in the press, and you know the way, you know, other bands that I don't understand their popularity or heralded. It's just that's the same way I felt back in 1986 about stuff. You know, it has never changed.
Well, I think, you know, that you guys have always been the underdog, but it's also why your fans are so hardcore, because everybody's like, you're like the secret you want to tell everybody else about. Like, you guys are like Prong, because there's so many bands that have been inspired by you. And I think what really got me about this new album is just, you don't, I mean, you sound like a band that's in their 20s. I mean, it's so much energy, and there's so much, you know, kind of just rage and anger and all that kind of stuff pouring through it, that I think it's a really a solid album. I like it quite a bit.
Thanks. Yeah, we were in good shape for it too. It was like the stars were aligned. Like I always say that. Like, I know what records I've been involved with, whether it be Prong or Danzig or Ministry, or I've been in other projects like Argyle Park and I don't know other ones. Teenage Time Killers, and there's a bunch of stuff. Even other stuff that I don't even remember doing. Uh, you know, I did studio work, etc. Like some records, is to say you go into a session and just like this is horrible. Like this is not going anywhere. You just know it's going to be, it's not right, and it's just who knows what that is. The je ne sais quoi of that. But this one, it was just like everything was going right. Like it was just like bam, bam. Okay, this what? Huh? Okay, you know that's the only. It was bizarre. So it's good. That was great.
And this is kind of a homecoming record for you to write, because this is recorded in New York. You've got the song back in NYC. How long have you been away from New York, and what prompted you to return?
Oh my God, I was gone for a really long time. Not that I haven't been back, like, you know, 'cause I had my family here and stuff, but uh, I haven't been living here. And then, like, you know, that's what I told Ollie from Steamhammer Records. It was like, you know, like I wanted to see what it was like for a while. Yeah, and we did. We moved back to be closer to our family, and then if my wife was able to find a job here, a good one, and it happened. So, yeah, no, I was gone for I don't know, like we're 25 years. I was living in Los Angeles, so uh, you know, I love LA. It's a great place, uh, but I think I like New York better now. You know, like I like things right now. I'm happier here now.
A couple of my favorite tracks, Non-Existence is probably my favorite song on the album. And I know you said that it was kind of like your way of looking back, or kind of a homage to Rude Awakening a little bit, which has always been my favorite Prong record. I've always loved that album. What made you decide to kind of go in that direction, or give a nod towards that song, and how did that one come about?
Well, it's interesting because like I have those kind of songs like riffs or anything like that that I was working on for the last couple, like 0 days or something. And the producer I was working with, Chris Colley, was a great producer, great dude, but he doesn't really come from that post punk thing, you know, like where like I'm just so solidly engaged with that era. Uh, Mainly, you know, like Sisters of Mercy, Killing Joke. That's really where I come from in a lot of ways. So, uh, you know, like a lot of those ideas are always like we sort of pushed them aside. The fact that I sat and wrote the whole album myself without even knowing, like, you know, not sending demos to the producer or anything like that, uh, was great, because I could just say, you know what, like I know this is Prong. I know this works for Prong. I don't need to run this across anybody in order for them to decide if it belongs on the record. I wrote 10 songs and I said, that's it. This is the record. Take it or leave it. And sometimes you got to get to the point of being like that. Like I said, like my disillusionment with the with the music biz and where rock music is now and where it has a lot to do with it. We're like, I really don't care. It's like it's like this is all the things that are Prong that people, like not the fans, but like a lot of people just like, oh, what is this shit? Like anybody can play this type of mentality, which kids today have. It's like everything's got to be technical, like everything it has to be completely technical and perfect, otherwise it sucks. And like I'm from like total slop guitar. Like those are my favorite guitar players, Neil Young and like Geordie from Killing Joke. It's not really sloppy, but it's like it's an attitude, No one gets that anymore. So that's why I wanted to make sure I had the attitude, like if I came up with a riff and I'm like, that has the Prong attitude. Like I just know it does. And that's how it made those riffs made it into songs that immediately emerged into the record,
Well, that leads me to two other tracks, Disconnected and Compliant, both of which I also really like. And Disconnected in particular, I mean, it kind of has that same vein, but it almost has a even more of an alternative kind of sound to it, or even a little bit of a kind of a punk rock vibe to it. Did that one was that one that came to you early, or when did that come in the process? And did those two songs did you know they were kind of giving a different bent, and just go with it, or was it kind of a surprise to you?
I have to be honest to say that looking back to the Cleansing album, which is like the most popular Prong album, and the way that thing is sequenced and the way that record runs, you have like it starts out like it smacks you in the head, and then it gets to like the groove songs, and then it starts to get a little weird. So that's how I wanted this record to run like that. That's why we could fit in something like Disconnected, and that's the same thing. That what I said about non-existence completely applies to Disconnected, where there's this side of me that is like, it's not necessarily thrash metal. So it's like, I know people say stuff like that. Oh, I'm really like a jazz musician or something, like, but like this is definitely a part of me, like that type of stuff. And then by the time we get through with it comes off pretty hard, but it's again, like unless you're from that era or have some kind of appreciation for, again, post-punk, which includes like early industrial and goth bands and mainly Killing Joke, you wouldn't really, I don't know if you can completely understand that. Compliant is the same way too. It has like this, it's almost alt progressive rock type of vibe in that as well. So they fit in because Cleansing was made. Like if Terry Date was such a great producer, he was like oh, whatever you guys want to do. In fact, do more what you want to do. This was against everything the label was telling us back then. They're like, you got to do it. We need singles. We need a ballad. We need this. There's nothing on this. They were like, there's nothing that's on this record that's going to go on the radio. And like Terry was like the guy going like, good. He was like, like write songs that don't go on the radio. It was like, and we're like, okay, fine. It's like, so or like we made it weird. It was like, wasn't purposeful, but it just worked. It was just for the time. It was cool. But it's the same thing. With the Rude Awakening album, they wanted. They drove us crazy. That was like the end for me. I couldn't deal with the way they wanted certain songs on that record. The label, being on a major label, really started infiltrating what we were doing, and that's why I don't think that record was a complete success at all. That record did not come out the way I thought that it could have been, and the way it should have been. And I hated the mixes on that record, and I didn't like the way it sounded. So like that was, and I didn't like. There was something seriously wrong with the production on that record. Terry was great on Cleansing, and then Rude Awakening was sort of like, ugh. Like, that's, to me, was a painful process too.
Oh, I love it. But but I understand like when you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, no,
you hear
just, I mean, a lot of people look to that record and they say, oh, well, this is the beginning of this, that, and the other thing, It could have been huge, but there wasn't, the love went in other directions. It wasn't polished right, correctly.
Well, I think you're talking about having that side to you, but you definitely, like, with the Descent and the title track, you're definitely still got your metal bona fides, and I think that it's some of your most precise playing to date, and great solo as well in the Descent. Was there anything you're thematically wise that kind of fed into all these songs, or that progression?
I don't play the solo in the Descent. That's Mark Rizzo plays that. So like I can't solo that great. Like everyone knows my solos, which are what they are. But no, that one was done by Rizzo. I'm not going to take credit for that. So no, I mean, like, I've been working hard on my guitar playing. I mean, I've been playing a lot in the last couple of years. So with Danzig, as well. And, Prong has done, we did like a huge tour with Black Label Society. It was the first time we did like a 2-month tour in forever. And then, we went right out again with Overkill. So there was like, my chops were like starting to get really, really good at the beginning of, before we moved. Actually, yeah, right before we moved back home. So, before I went into writing, it was looking like I was on top of my game.
We definitely are. And I also was going to say your guitar tone is still distinctive and sharp as ever. Have you changed that at all over the years, or is it still pretty much the same?
Oh, no, it's changed a lot. Like, I went through a whole little thing of guitar, what I use, and even on the records. And this is the first record that I put another thing is I put my foot down. I used my live rig on this record. So if it works live, I mean, why does it not work in the studio? Like, it's like I love Collier. We made a couple of good records together. But that was something that we fought about was the amps used on even with Evans too. He was always pushed for certain stuff. Producers like to use like boutique shit. So it's like like they're like they want to tell people they use this, that, and the other thing. So I get it. But I use what I use, and we used that on this record. So,
Do you think your time, since you've been playing with Danzig for quite a while now, do you think any of that style ever kind of bleeds into Prong, or is that something completely separate and that you really haven't absorbed that as far as into your playing beyond?
I don't know. I mean, it's always a challenge, that gig for me, and people are like, why? It's like the easiest songs in the world. Like, and I'm like, they're not for me. Like they especially the clean parts, the solos, are always a challenge for me in that band. So, I don't know if it's infiltrated at all. I would say no, but it's like the fact that I'm playing guitar is what really, it's a muscle that needs to be continually, worked. And, I love the Danzig material because it's like the mentality of it is where I'm at, where it's like, like who freaking cares? It's like, like it has this weird space where, like no one really understands what it is. And like, I'm talking about the first 3 albums. And so, like with Glenn being such a sponge for all this music, and like that has come together and made him, and it's such a fantastic thing. And like it's amazing. And that's why I like it. The same thing with Prong, where it's like this collage of all these styles, and it comes out like this. So
I wanted to circle back, since I had the cat and the dog making noise in the very first question. I just wanted to kind of re-ask. You've been 13 years into this, from Force Fed to this new album. Do you do you see like a through line from your first album to this album? Do you kind of see like how the band's progressed and what stayed the same, and what do you think is the ultimate kind of legacy of Prong for you, as far as how you progressed, but also that same spirit that's still there, even though, obviously you've become much more of an accomplished player over the years?
I think it's finally sort of come together a little bit. I've always been jealous of the AC/DCs and Ramones, and like Creedence, one of my big favorites, where it's like, that's Creedence Clearwater Revival, man, like, and that's it, and the Ramones, and like, it's like regardless of like some of the records, they always sound like that band, and the consistency, and that's something that Prong didn't really have. I think with this record, it's after all these years, it's finally like I finally like put it together where it's like, this is what it is, and like, the formula is finally there, it's like, so that's how I feel about it. Like we were like trying to break ground, experimenting here, doing this, doing that, the other thing, growing our hair, cutting our hair, like wearing crazy clothes, not wearing crazy clothes. It was like this constant thing. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, you know what I mean? It's like going straight edge, then doing drugs. Like, it was like we never were on a consistent thing. It was like constantly changing, and like that. I'm pretty much adverse to that. For a guy that's been in a band that's changed so much, that's like it's very against my character, which is one of the weird things about it. Like, now I don't want to change anymore. I forget it. I'm not trying to break any more ground. I don't want to change. I'm sticking to the same logo, and like, that's it. And like, this is what Prong is. That's where I've gotten.
Well, I think the album's great. I think State of Emergency is a perfect introduction for people who haven't been exposed to Prong before. And I really do hope that you get some exposure from it. And I'm definitely going to promote it. I reviewed it. I really like it a lot.
Thank you, man.
Any plans for touring? I'm sure you will.
Yeah, we're trying to work that out. We're going to definitely go out in America. We do Europe again for the 3rd time this year in November. And it's crazy, like how you talk about how the band, like we were like nothing for a while, and then it's popular again. So Europe, it's been great. So then then hopefully that shows up in America again the next time we tour. Well, the last 2 tours we did in America were good, so we're trying to get that happening. It's going to happen. There's been things that it's like everything keeps falling through right now. So.
Well, hopefully you'll make it down to Austin sometime soon, and I will be there.
Cool, man. Thank you, bud.
All right, thanks, Tommy. Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thanks to Tommy for taking the time out to do the interview. You can buy State of Emergency on your musical platform of choice, and I highly recommend it. As promised, we're closing out with the song Non-Existence. I think you're going to dig it. Stay tuned, because later this week we'll be having an episode with my friend Jack. We'll be talking about the best horror films to watch for Halloween. And until then, stay safe and stay sane.